At the law office, I heard my daughter-in-law, Jessica, whisper to my son, Michael, "After the deed is signed, the house is ours. While your mother is here, I already moved my stuff into her place." I pretended I had not heard a thing. My hands remained calm on the mahogany table, my face serene, as if nothing had happened. But inside, every word Jessica said resonated in my head like a clap of thunder. She was there, to my left, wearing that wine-colored dress that fit her a little too tightly, looking at Mr. Henderson, the attorney, with a triumphant smile she could barely hide. My son Michael, sitting to my right, kept his gaze lowered, like a child who knows he is doing something wrong but lacks the courage to stop it. Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses, took the document in his hands, and looked me directly in the eyes. "Mrs. Margaret, are you completely sure and in agreement with this transfer of property?" The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Jessica stopped breathing for a second, her smile freezing on her red lips. Michael swallowed audibly. The others present in the office, 2 legal assistants and a witness I did not know, looked at us with curiosity. Everyone was waiting for my answer. I took a breath slowly, very slowly, and when I opened my mouth, what came out made Jessica and Michael turn pale as a sheet. What I said caused the others to let out nervous chuckles, made Mr. Henderson raise an eyebrow in surprise, and made my dear daughter-in-law realize she had completely underestimated the foolish old woman she thought I was. But to understand how I reached that moment, to understand why my words had such a devastating effect, I need to take you back in time. I need to tell you who I really am, and how a 63-year-old woman who believed in family above all else ended up sitting in front of a lawyer, about to teach her own flesh and blood the hardest lesson of his life. My name is Margaret, and for 42 years I was the wife of Arthur, a good man who worked until the last day of his life as a civil engineer. Together, we built everything from scratch. When we got married, we had nothing but love and dreams tucked in our pockets. We rented an apartment so small that when we opened the refrigerator, we had to close the bathroom door. Arthur worked double shifts. I gave sewing lessons to the neighbors in the building, and every dollar we earned, we saved in a cookie jar hidden behind the plates. Like that, penny by penny, dollar by dollar, we saved enough for the down payment on our first house. I remember the day we received the keys as if it were yesterday. Arthur carried me in his arms to cross the threshold, even though I was already 6 months pregnant with Michael, and he almost broke his back. We laughed so hard that the neighbors came out to see what the commotion was. That 2-story house, with a small front lawn and a backyard where Arthur dreamed of putting a barbecue grill, became our entire universe. Michael was born there. He took his first steps there, and we celebrated every birthday, every Christmas, every small and big triumph of our lives there. Arthur died 5 years ago. It was a massive heart attack while driving back from work. He did not suffer, the doctors told me. As if that were a consolation, I was left devastated, empty, like an abandoned house where the wind blows through broken windows. Michael, who was already 30 years old and working at a marketing firm, moved in with me for the first few months. He took care of me, cooked for me, forced me to get out of bed when I just wanted to stay there, crying until I dried up inside. He was my salvation in those dark days. Little by little, I learned to live with the pain. I learned to eat breakfast alone without crying, to watch the news without waiting for Arthur to comment on it, to sleep in that huge bed without reaching out looking for his warmth. My neighbor and friend Barbara, a woman my age with a sense of humor that could wake the dead, became my constant company. We went to the grocery store together, drank coffee in the afternoons, and complained about our creaking knees and the young people walking glued to their phones without looking where they were going. The house remained my refuge, my most precious treasure. Every corner held memories of Arthur. Every piece of furniture had a story. We chose the cream-colored sofa in the living room together after arguing for an hour at the store. We bought the dining table at a flea market, and Arthur restored it with his own hands. The mirror in the hallway was a wedding gift that survived 3 moves. That house was not just bricks and cement. It was my entire life turned into walls. Michael came to visit me twice a week. He always brought something: flowers, donuts, some dessert he knew I liked. We talked about everything: his job, his plans, how much he missed his father. I saw him and felt that I still had a purpose in this world. I was still his mother. I was still needed. Then, 3 years ago, everything changed. Michael arrived one Sunday with a nervous smile and told me he had met someone special. Her name was Jessica. She worked in public relations, and according to him, she was the most wonderful woman on the planet. I was genuinely happy. My son deserved to be happy. He deserved to have someone who loved him the way Arthur loved me. I told him to bring her home, that I wanted to meet her. The first time I saw Jessica, something in my stomach turned. I do not know if it was a mother's instinct or simply the intuition of an old woman who has seen a lot of life, but there was something in her eyes I did not like. She arrived dressed in an ivory power suit, sky-high heels that echoed on the hardwood floor, and a smile that was too perfect, too practiced. She hugged me with exaggerated enthusiasm, as if we were lifelong friends. "Oh, Mrs. Margaret, what a charming house. It has so much potential." Potential. That word hung in the air like an annoying fly. I smiled and offered her coffee. All afternoon, Jessica was polite, well-mannered, saying all the right things. But while Michael washed the dishes in the kitchen, she walked around the living room touching everything, looking at every detail with the eyes of an appraiser, as if she were calculating how much each object was worth. When Michael announced they were getting married, I tried to feel happy for him. I really tried. He showed me the ring he had bought Jessica, a huge diamond that must have cost him several months of salary, and spoke to me about their wedding plans. I nodded, smiled, said the appropriate things a mother should say. But deep down, that uncomfortable feeling in my stomach did not disappear. Barbara told me it was normal to feel jealous when a son gets married, that all mothers go through that. But it was not jealousy. It was something deeper, more visceral. It was like watching your son walk toward a cliff and not being able to do anything to stop him. The wedding was a spectacular event. Jessica took charge of every detail, from the invitations with gold lettering to the 5-tier cake decorated with edible flowers. I offered to help financially, but she rejected my offer with a little laugh that sounded condescending. "Don't worry, Mrs. Margaret. We will take care of everything. You just enjoy the day." I felt like a guest at my own son's wedding. During the ceremony, while I watched them exchange vows, I prayed silently that I was wrong about Jessica. I prayed that she really loved Michael, that my doubts were just the paranoia of a lonely old woman. The first few months after the wedding were relatively quiet. Michael and Jessica rented a small apartment near downtown, and my son continued visiting me regularly, although now less frequently. Once a week, sometimes every 2 weeks. He always came alone. When I asked about Jessica, he said she was busy with work, that she had many projects, that she sent her regards. I did not insist, but it hurt that my daughter-in-law did not make the effort to come see me. One Saturday afternoon, 6 months after the wedding, my doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there was Jessica, alone, with a huge smile and a bakery box in her hands. "Surprise! Hi, Mom. I thought we could spend the afternoon together, get to know each other better. Michael is playing basketball with his friends, so I took the chance to come over." I was pleasantly surprised. Maybe I had been wrong about her. Maybe she just needed time to adapt to the family. I let her in, made tea, and we sat in the living room. Jessica was charming for the first hour. She asked me about Arthur, about how we met, about the first years of our marriage. I told her stories, showed her old photos, and for a moment, I felt she was genuinely interested in knowing me. Then, suddenly, her tone changed. She stood up and started walking around the room, touching the curtains, looking at the paintings on the walls, analyzing every corner with that same appraising look I had seen the first time. "Mrs. Margaret, I don't want to be disrespectful, but this house needs an urgent renovation. Look at these curtains. They must be 20 years old. And this sofa, even though it has sentimental value, is completely out of style. If you wanted, I know excellent interior designers who could transform this place into something really modern and functional." I was left speechless. Had she just criticized my house? The house Arthur and I built with so much effort? I tried to stay calm. "Thanks for the suggestion, Jessica, but I like my house just the way it is. Everything here has a memory, a story." She let out a light, almost mocking laugh. "Oh, Mom, I understand the emotional attachment, But sometimes you have to let go of the past and embrace the future. Besides, think about when Michael and I have children. They will need a more cheerful, brighter space, not this museum of antiques. I felt my blood boiling, but I bit my tongue. I did not want to create problems between her and Michael. I changed the subject quickly, and Jessica left half an hour later with the same radiant smile she had arrived with. When Barbara came over that night and I told her what happened, she shook her head with concern. "That girl has plans, Margaret. She marked her territory today. Be careful." Jessica's visits became more frequent. She always came when Michael was busy, always with that best friend attitude that could barely disguise her true intention. Every time she came, she made some comment about the house, that the walls needed fresh paint, that the garden was neglected, that the kitchen was too old, that the master bathroom needed a complete remodel. I endured her comments with a forced smile, but inside I felt that every word was an invasion, an attempt to erase the life Arthur and I had built. One day, Michael came to visit me with a proposal. He sat across from me in the dining room, hands clasped on the table, and looked at me with those eyes that reminded me so much of his father. "Mom, Jessica and I have been thinking. You are alone in this huge house, and that isn't safe for a woman your age. What would happen if you fell and there was no one to help you? What would happen if a burglar broke in? We thought that maybe it would be a good idea for us to move in here with you. That way, you would have company, be protected, and we would save on the apartment rent." My heart shrank. He said it as if it were a great idea, as if he were doing me a favor, but I heard Jessica's words behind every sentence. "I don't know, son. This house is big, but I don't know if it's a good idea for 3 adults to live under the same roof. You need your space, your privacy," Michael insisted. "Mom, please, think about it. We just want to take care of you. Besides, eventually, this house will be mine, right? You and Dad always said that everything you had would be for me someday." Those words hurt me more than he could imagine. He was right. Arthur and I had always planned for Michael to inherit everything. He was our only son, the fruit of our love, our legacy. But hearing him say it like that, as if he were claiming something that already belonged to him while I was still alive, made me feel like an old piece of furniture that was in the way. I told him I would think about it, and he left with a satisfied smile that I did not like at all. That night I could not sleep. I tossed and turned over the conversation. Was I being selfish? Should I accept them living with me? The next day, I called Barbara and told her everything. She was direct, as always. "Margaret, if you let them in, you will never get them out. That Jessica doesn't want to take care of you. She wants your house. Open your eyes, friend." I decided to refuse. When Michael asked again, I told him firmly that I preferred to maintain my independence, that I appreciated his concern but that I was perfectly fine alone. I saw the disappointment on his face. And something else? Anger? Frustration? I was not sure. He left without saying goodbye with a kiss, just an, "Okay, Mom, whatever you want." That sounded cold and distant. I thought the matter would end there, but I was wrong. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, I heard noise in my front yard. I went out and almost had a heart attack. There were 2 men pruning the trees Arthur had planted, cutting branches, ripping out bushes. "What are you doing?" I shouted. One of them showed me a work order. Mrs. Jessica hired our services to remodel the landscape. I could not believe it. I called Jessica immediately, furious. She answered with that sweet, fake voice I already knew so well. "Oh, hi, Mom. I wanted to surprise you. The garden was so neglected." "Don't worry. I'm paying for everything." "I don't want you to pay for anything. This is my garden, my house. Do not ever do this again without consulting me." There was silence on the other end. When Jessica spoke again, her voice was no longer sweet. It was cold, sharp. "Calm down, Mrs. Margaret. I just want to help. But if you're going to get like this, just forget it." She hung up. I was left shaking with rage, watching those men destroy my husband's years of work. I called Michael, but he defended Jessica. "Mom, she just wanted to help you. Why do you react like that? You're exaggerating." Those words broke my heart. My son was blind, completely manipulated by that woman. After the garden incident, I established a clear rule. I told Michael that Jessica was no longer welcome in my house unless he was present. My son got upset, accused me of being unfair to his wife, of not giving her a chance. We had our first serious fight since he was a teenager. We shouted things we did not mean, and he left slamming the door, making the walls shake. We did not speak for 3 weeks. They were the 3 longest and most painful weeks of my life. Every time the phone rang, I ran hoping it was him, but it never was. Barbara accompanied me every afternoon, trying to distract me, but I felt miserable. I had lost my husband, and now I was losing my son because of that woman. One night, while I was crying in bed hugging a photo of Michael as a child, the phone rang. It was him. "Mom, forgive me. I don't want to fight with you. You're the only thing I have left of Dad. Can we talk?" That conversation gave me hope. I thought he was finally seeing the truth about Jessica. We met the next day at a coffee shop, neutral ground, far from the house. Michael looked tired, with deep circles under his eyes. He took my hands and looked at me with those pleading eyes he used as a child when he wanted something. "Mom, I know you and Jessica have had friction, but she really appreciates you. It's just that sometimes she is very enthusiastic and doesn't measure her actions. I love her, Mom. She is my wife. I need you two to get along because you are the most important women in my life." I wanted to scream at him to open his eyes, that this woman was playing him, that she was only interested in our house and our money. But when I saw his pleading face, when I felt his trembling hands in mine, I couldn't. I swallowed my words and nodded. "Okay, son. I will make an effort." Jessica reappeared in my life stronger than ever. But now it was different. She didn't pretend as much anymore. Her comments about the house became more direct, more demanding. "Missus, Margaret, I found an excellent painter who can renovate the whole house for just $3,000. What do you say we split the cost?" I refused again and again, but she insisted with exhausting persistence. She started bringing decorating magazines, showing me photos on her phone of modern and functional houses, suggesting I sell the antique furniture and buy new things. One day she arrived with news that left me frozen. "Mom, I have something wonderful to tell you. I'm pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother." My first reaction should have been joy, but instead, I felt panic. A baby. That would give Jessica even more power, more reasons to claim rights over my house, over my life. I forced a smile and congratulated her, but inside I knew this changed the whole game. That same night, Jessica and Michael came over together. My son was beaming with happiness. "Mom, we're going to need more space. The apartment where we live is too small for a baby. We've been looking for houses, but everything is super expensive. Prices are through the roof, and with the baby expenses coming, we simply can't afford a mortgage right now." I knew exactly where this conversation was going. Jessica took the floor, with that honeyed voice I detested so much. "That's why we thought that maybe, just maybe, we could move here temporarily, just until the baby is born, and we stabilize financially. This house has 4 bedrooms. There is plenty of room. You would have your space, we ours, and the baby could grow up with his grandmother nearby. Wouldn't that be beautiful?" Beautiful. That word sounded like a death trap. I looked at Michael, looking for some sign that this was his idea, not hers. But I only saw hope in his eyes, the genuine desire for me to accept. I felt cornered. If I said no, I would be the cruel grandmother who denies a roof to her grandchild. If I said yes, I would be opening the door to a total invasion of my space, my privacy, my peace. "I need time to think about it," was all I could say. For a week, I didn't sleep well. I turned the matter over and over. I consulted with Barbara, who was categorical. "Don't do it, Margaret. Temporary means permanent. They get in and never leave. And that Jessica is going to turn your life into hell." But then I thought about my grandchild, about that baby carrying my blood, about the possibility of watching him grow, of being present in his life. How could I deny that? Finally, against all my instincts, I accepted. But I set conditions. It would be temporary, maximum 1 year. They would pay half the utilities. They would not make modifications to the house without my authorization. And my bedroom and my study were forbidden territory, completely off limits. Michael accepted everything with enthusiasm. Jessica also accepted. But there was something in her smile that made me feel I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. They moved in on a sunny Saturday in March. They arrived with a truck full of things, much more than I expected for a temporary stay. Boxes and boxes of clothes, furniture, appliances, decorations. I watched from my bedroom window as they invaded my home, feeling that every box that entered was a piece of my freedom leaving. Jessica directed the movers like a general commanding troops, telling them exactly where to put everything. She took the main bedroom on the second floor, the one with the private bath and the balcony overlooking the garden. It was the second best room in the house, after mine. The first few days were relatively peaceful. Everyone respected their space. We shared the kitchen at different times. We greeted each other politely when we crossed paths. But that peace lasted exactly 5 days. On the 6th day, I went down to breakfast and found the living room completely reorganized. Jessica had moved all the furniture, changed the paintings around, and put up new sand-colored curtains she bought without asking me. "Good morning, Mom. Do you like it?" I wanted to give this space a fresher look. Those old curtains were so faded. I took a deep breath, remembering my promise to keep the peace. "Jessica, we agreed you wouldn't make changes without consulting me first." She put on a face of offended innocence. "Oh, I just changed some curtains. I didn't think it was a big deal. Besides, this looks much better, doesn't it? More modern." Michael appeared at that moment, yawning, in pajamas. He looked at the living room and smiled. "Looks good, babe. Good job." He didn't even ask for my opinion. It was at that moment I understood that my son was no longer on my side. Jessica had conquered him completely. The following weeks were a progressive descent into chaos. Jessica started taking over more and more spaces. She reorganized the entire kitchen, throwing away my old spice racks and replacing them with modern glass jars. She changed the towels in the master bath for gray ones she considered more elegant. She replaced the plants in the hallway with artificial ones that required no maintenance. Every change was small, apparently insignificant, but added all together. My house no longer felt like my house. It felt like Jessica's decorating project. I protested, but I always met the same response. "Mom, don't be so attached to material things. Change is good. Besides, think about the baby. Everything has to be perfect for when he arrives." The baby had become her shield, her justification for every invasion. And Michael backed her on everything. Every time I tried to talk to him, he told me I was exaggerating, that Jessica only wanted to help, that I was being too sensitive. I felt like a stranger in my own home, like an annoying guest who had overstayed her welcome. 2 months after they moved in, Jessica lost the baby. It was a Sunday morning. I heard screams from her room and ran upstairs. Michael was coming out of his room carrying Jessica. She was pale. I drove them to the hospital in my car, driving faster than I had driven in years, praying everything would be okay. We spent 6 hours in the waiting room. When the doctor came out, the news was devastating. They had lost the baby. A miscarriage. Something that happens in the first trimester more often than people think. It was nobody's fault. Just one of those tragedies life throws at you without warning. I saw my son break in front of my eyes. Michael cried like I hadn't seen him cry since his father's death. I hugged him, tried to console him, but there was a pain in his eyes that words couldn't reach. Jessica was hospitalized for 2 days. When we returned home, I hoped that maybe this terrible event would make them reconsider, that they would understand it was time to find their own space, to heal as a couple in their own privacy. I was wrong. Jessica used the tragedy as an anchor. She settled into the house more firmly than ever, now under the mantle of grief that no one could question. "I need to be surrounded by family at this difficult time," she would say with a broken voice every time I hinted at anything about deadlines or moving. And what could I do? Kick them out in the middle of their pain? I am not a monster. So I shut up and waited. I waited for the grief to pass, for them to heal, for them to return to normal. But normal never came. Jessica immersed herself in a performative sadness that lasted exactly as long as there were witnesses. When Michael was home, she was the grieving widow, the broken woman who could barely get out of bed. But when Michael went to work, Jessica was a completely different person. I saw her perfectly made up talking on the phone with her friends, laughing out loud. I saw her ordering delivery food, watching series on the living room TV, reorganizing more things in the house. Her pain was selective, convenient, strategic, and I started to suspect something terrible. Had she really been pregnant? I never saw proof, never saw an ultrasound, never went to any prenatal appointment with them. I only had Jessica's word. I shared my suspicions with Barbara one afternoon, while we drank coffee at her house. She opened her eyes wide. "Margaret, that would be monstrous. No one would lie about something like that." But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. The pregnancy had given her the perfect excuse to move into my house. The loss gave her the perfect excuse to stay indefinitely. It was too convenient, too perfect. I tried to investigate discreetly, looking for some medical receipt, some pregnancy test, any evidence. I found nothing. I asked Michael the name of the doctor who had treated Jessica. He looked at me strangely. "Why do you want to know, Mom?" I couldn't give him a convincing reason without sounding like a paranoid and cruel mother-in-law. I dropped the subject, but the doubt never left me. Months passed, and the situation worsened. Jessica no longer bothered to feign respect for my spaces. She entered my bedroom when I wasn't there, moved my things, went through my drawers. I knew because I left small traps, a hair in a certain place, a coin in a certain position. They always appeared moved. One day, I confronted Jessica directly. "You have been entering my room." She looked at me with those big, innocent eyes she knew how to put on so well. "Me? No, Mom, you must be confused. Maybe it was Michael looking for something, but I knew the truth. I installed a deadbolt on my door, one I could lock from the inside and outside. When Jessica saw it, her mask slipped for a second. I saw pure fury in her look, but she quickly hid it with a nervous laugh. "Wow, Mrs. Margaret, now you don't trust us? How sad." That night, Michael confronted me. "Mom, Jessica is very hurt. Putting a lock is like saying you don't trust us. We live under the same roof. We're supposed to be family." I explained that I only wanted privacy, that it was my right to have a space completely mine. But I saw the disappointment on his face. Jessica had poisoned him against me, drop by drop, comment by comment. Now I was the villain, the suspicious and bitter mother-in-law making coexistence difficult. The tension in the house became unbearable. Jessica and I barely spoke. When we coincided in the kitchen, the silence was so thick it could suffocate you. Michael worked more and more hours, avoiding being at home, escaping the Cold War unfolding between his wife and his mother. One afternoon, while Jessica was at the beauty salon, Barbara came to visit me. We sat in my bedroom, the only safe zone in the house, and I cried on her shoulder. "I can't take it anymore. Barbara, this woman is pushing me out of my own house. And my son sees nothing. He is completely blind." My friend stroked my hair, like one does with a sad child. "Margaret, you need to protect yourself. Legally, financially, emotionally. That girl has plans, and you are in the way of those plans." Her words resonated with me for days. She was right. I needed to protect myself. But how? Jessica had already conquered most of my house, already had my son on her side, already built a narrative where I was the bad guy. One day, while organizing old papers in my study, I found something that made me think. It was the will Arthur and I had made together, 15 years ago. In it, everything was left to Michael, the house, the savings, everything. It was a simple document, made when Michael was just a young man, and we never imagined Arthur would die first, let alone that our son would marry someone like Jessica. That night, I couldn't sleep. An idea began to form in my head. A crazy, risky, but necessary idea. If Jessica wanted my house so much, if she was willing to lie, manipulate, and destroy our family relationship for it, then I needed to move my pieces too. I wasn't going to be a passive victim. I wasn't going to let them kick me out of the home I built with my own hands and the sweat of my dead husband. The next day, I called Barbara and asked her to recommend a lawyer. "A lawyer? What for?" she asked, surprised. "For war," I replied. And I meant it. Barbara gave me the contact of her nephew, a young but brilliant lawyer named Jason. I contacted him and scheduled an appointment for the following week, at his office, far from any possibility of Jessica or Michael finding out. During that week, I acted normally. I cooked, cleaned, watched TV, pretended everything was fine. But inside, my mind was working a mile a minute, planning, calculating, preparing for what was to come. The day of the appointment with Jason arrived. I told Jessica I was going to the doctor, a routine checkup. She barely looked up from her phone. "Have a good time, Mom." I took the bus downtown, something I hadn't done in months. I felt like a spy in my own life, hiding secrets, moving in the shadows. Jason's office was small but professional. He received me with a warm smile and offered me coffee. He was a man of about 35, with glasses and a presence that inspired confidence. I told him the whole story. From the beginning, since Jessica appeared in our lives, to the current situation. I omitted nothing. The alleged pregnancy, the constant invasions, the manipulation of Michael, everything. Jason listened attentively, taking notes. When I finished, he remained thoughtful for several seconds. Jason left his pen on the desk and looked me directly in the eyes with a seriousness that made me straighten my back. "Mrs. Margaret, I understand your situation perfectly. I have seen similar cases, more than you imagine. Daughters-in-law, sons-in-law, even children who manipulate their elderly parents to keep their properties. It is more common than we think. Legally, you are in a vulnerable position." His words fell on me like a bucket of cold water. Vulnerable? But it's my house. It's in my name. "Exactly," Jason said. "It is in your name now. But if something happened to you, or if in a moment of weakness you signed some document without reading it well, Jessica could end up with everything. Furthermore, the fact that they live in the house already gives them certain occupancy rights. If you wanted to kick them out right now, you would need a legal eviction process that could take months, maybe a year. And during that time, coexistence would be absolutely unsustainable." I felt dizzy. "So, what can I do? Do I have to resign myself to losing my house?" Jason shook his head. "No, Mrs. Margaret. You have options. Several, in fact. But you need to act with intelligence, not emotion. Let me explain." During the next hour, Jason presented different scenarios. I could make a new will. Very specific, establishing conditions for Michael to inherit. I could create a trust where I maintained control until my death. I could sell the house and move somewhere else, although that option broke my heart. Or I could do something more radical, something that would put an end to this situation once and for all. "There is an option that some of my clients have used in extreme cases," Jason said, lowering his voice a little as if we were sharing a dangerous secret. "You can donate the property to a foundation or charity, reserving the right of a life estate. That means you would live in the house until your death, but the property would no longer be yours to inherit. When you pass away, the house would automatically pass to the institution you choose, not to Michael or anyone else." I was left breathless. The idea was so drastic, so final, that it scared me. But at the same time, it had an implacable logic. If Jessica wanted my house, if she was willing to destroy our family for it, then I would simply ensure she never got it. "Can I think about it?" I asked with a trembling voice. "Of course," Jason replied. "It is a huge decision. Take your time, but I recommend you act soon. These situations tend to get worse, not better." I left that office with my head spinning. The bus ride back was a blur. When I got home, Jessica was in the living room watching TV, eating popcorn. "How did it go at the doctor?" she asked, without looking at me. "Fine. Everything fine," I lied. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and sat on the bed, trembling. I held in my hands the power to change everything, but also the power to permanently break my relationship with Michael. Was I willing to go that far? Over the next 2 weeks, I observed everything with new eyes. Every movement of Jessica, every word of Michael, every detail of the house dynamic. And what I saw convinced me that Jason was right. Jessica wasn't going to stop. In fact, she was accelerating her plans. She started bringing friends to the house without warning me, organizing dinners where I felt like an intruder in my own dining room. She began to speak openly about when this house is ours, as if I no longer existed. One day, I heard her talking on the phone in the garden, and what I heard froze my blood. "Don't worry, Mom. Soon this house will be completely ours. The old lady isn't going to last forever, and Michael is an only child. We've already done most of the work. It's just a matter of time." I felt like I couldn't breathe. I went to my room before she saw me, locked myself in, and cried. I cried for my son, for the family we had been, for everything I was losing. But when the tears dried, only a cold, hard certainty remained. Jessica saw me as a temporary obstacle. She was waiting for me to die to keep everything. I wasn't going to give her that pleasure. The next day I called Jason. I want to do it. I want to donate the house with a life estate deed. What do I need? I could hear the surprise in his voice, but also the respect. Very well, Mrs. Margaret. We need to choose the beneficiary institution. Do you have one in mind? I thought about it for a second. A foundation for the elderly. One that helps people my age who are alone, who need support, who might be going through the same thing as me. Jason knew the perfect foundation. A serious, well-established organization that provided housing and care to elderly people without resources. It was perfect. We prepared all the documents in secret. Every time Jessica thought I was going to the doctor or to have coffee with Barbara, I was at Jason's office, signing papers, reviewing clauses, making sure everything was perfect. The process took 3 weeks. During that time, I maintained an almost supernatural calm at home. I smiled, nodded, let Jessica do whatever she wanted. She interpreted my passivity as surrender, as acceptance of my defeat. She had no idea of the bomb that was about to explode, but there was a problem. For the donation to be ironclad and avoid future legal challenges, Jason recommended we do the final signing with a formal notary present, and he suggested having Michael there as the direct heir who was being excluded. Jason explained that legally, it wasn't strictly necessary for him to be there to validate my signature, but it was ethically correct and would prevent future claims that I was coerced or not of sound mind. Michael had a right to know he was being disinherited. The question was how to get him to come without raising suspicions. Then I came up with a plan. I told Michael I had decided to transfer the house to him while I was alive as an early inheritance gift. Son, I've been thinking. Your father and I always wanted this house to be yours. Why wait until I die? I want to see you enjoy it now. I want to have the peace of mind that it is in your hands. I saw the surprise on his face, followed immediately by something that hurt me to recognize. Greed. Pure greed. Really, Mom? You would do that? His excitement was almost childish. Yes, son. I have spoken with an attorney. We have an appointment next Tuesday at 10 in the morning. I just need you to come sign the papers. Michael hugged me with a strength I hadn't felt in years. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. This means everything to us. To us. Not to him. To them. To Jessica. That night, I heard celebrations in their room. Laughter, soft music, glasses clinking. Jessica was euphoric. She had won. Or so she thought. Monday night, the day before the appointment, I could barely sleep. I mentally reviewed every detail of the plan. Jason had assured me everything was in order, that the documents were impeccable, that the foundation was already informed and in agreement. But still, I was afraid. Afraid of Michael's reaction, afraid of losing him forever, afraid of making an irreparable mistake. But then I remembered Jessica's words on the phone. I remembered every humiliation, every invasion, every manipulation, and the fear transformed into determination. Tuesday dawned with a gray sky threatening rain. I dressed with care. I chose a pearl-colored suit that Arthur had given me for our 30th anniversary. I applied light makeup. I combed my hair with care. I wanted to look dignified, strong, in control. I went down to breakfast and found Jessica already ready, dressed in a black power suit that gave her an executive air. She was carrying a folder in her hands. "Good morning, Mom. What a special day. I'm so excited." I smiled without saying anything. Michael appeared minutes later, also dressed formally. He looked happy, relaxed, completely oblivious to what was about to happen. We went, the three of us, in my car to the law office. The trip was tense for me, but Jessica wouldn't stop talking. When the house is officially ours, the first thing we'll do is completely remodel the kitchen. Those cabinets are horrible. And then the master bathroom needs a modern tub, one of those with jets. Every word was a stab, but I maintained my composure. Michael listened to her smiling, nodding at every plan she exposed. Plans for my house, plans that would never come true. We arrived at the office at 10 o'clock sharp. Mr. Henderson, the attorney acting as the notary, received us in his office, a room with shelves full of legal books and diplomas on the walls. He indicated for us to take a seat. I sat in the center, Michael to my right, Jessica to my left. There were 2 legal assistants present as witnesses, and an older man I didn't know who turned out to be the representative of the foundation. Mr. Henderson opened a thick folder on his desk and took out several documents. Jessica leaned forward, eager, eyes shining with anticipation. Michael had his hands clasped on the table, nervous but happy. I kept a neutral expression, although inside my heart was beating like a war drum. Mr. Henderson began with the usual formalities, verifying our identities, confirming that we were all present of our own free will, explaining that this was a legal act that would be permanently recorded. Jessica couldn't sit still. She shifted in her chair every 2 seconds, smoothed her hair, checked her makeup in a small mirror. She was savoring her victory ahead of time. Then, just as the attorney was about to read the document, Jessica leaned toward Michael and whispered something to him. But it wasn't a whisper as low as she thought. Or maybe she did it on purpose, with that arrogance that comes from the certainty of having won. Her words reached my ears with perfect clarity, every syllable like a hammer hitting metal. After the deed is signed, the house is ours. While your mother is here, I already moved my stuff into her place. Time stopped. I felt every muscle in my body tense up. Jessica had been moving her belongings into my house while I was here, at the office. She had probably hired people to move boxes, furniture, clothes. She was taking total, immediate possession, without even waiting for the ink to dry on the document. The audacity, the nerve, the absolute lack of respect was so monumental it almost made me laugh. Almost. Instead, I lowered my gaze to my hands and focused on breathing. In, out, in, out. I couldn't react yet. I had to wait for the exact moment. Jessica let out a stifled giggle, as if she had just shared a private joke with Michael. My son. My only son. The baby I carried in my womb. The boy I taught to walk. The young man I supported in every decision. Simply nodded his head. He didn't say anything. He didn't reprimand her. He didn't look at me seeking my reaction. He just nodded, complicit in that betrayal so brutal it cut deeper than any knife. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat and began to read the document. His voice was monotone, professional, reciting legal terms that filled the air of the office. Jessica wasn't paying attention to the specific words. She was just waiting for the moment to sign. Michael listened with more attention, but he also didn't seem to really process what was being said. I, on the other hand, knew every word of that document. I had read and reread it dozens of times with Jason. I knew exactly what it said, and I knew exactly what the reaction would be when everyone present understood its real content. The attorney reached the crucial part. By means of this present document, Mrs. Margaret donates inter vivos the property located at, and he read my full address. Jessica smiled even more broadly. But Mr. Henderson continued. To the Street Arthur Foundation for the Elderly, reserving the right of an exclusive and non-transferable life estate of said property. There was silence. A silence so deep I could hear the hum of the fluorescent lamp on the ceiling. Jessica blinked several times, as if she were processing words in a foreign language. Michael straightened in his chair. Wait, my son said, with a confused voice. Foundation? I thought Mom was transferring the house to me. Mr. Henderson looked at him over his glasses. No, Mr. Michael. This document clearly establishes that the property will be donated to the charitable foundation mentioned. Mrs. Margaret will maintain the right to live in the property until her passing, at which moment it will automatically pass to the ownership of the foundation. Mr. Michael is present as a direct heir who must be notified of this decision, but is not a beneficiary of this transfer. Jessica's face changed so dramatically it was almost comical. The color disappeared from her cheeks, her eyes opened huge, her mouth formed a perfect O of absolute shock. She turned toward me with an expression that mixed disbelief, fury, and panic in equal parts. Michael was also looking at me, but his expression was different. There was confusion, pain, something that could have been betrayal. Mom, what is this? You said you were going to transfer the house to me. Finally, I spoke. My voice came out calm, cold, totally in control. I said I was going to resolve the matter of the house, son. And that is exactly what I am doing. Jessica stood up so abruptly her chair almost fell backward. This is insane. She can't do this. Michael is her son, her only son. That house belongs to him by right. Mr. Henderson raised a hand. Ma'am, please take a seat. Mrs. Margaret has every legal right to dispose of her property as she sees fit. There is no legal obligation to inherit to children while alive. Jessica let herself fall into the chair, but her face was red with contained rage. Michael kept looking at me as if he didn't know me. Why, Mom? Why would you do this? Now came my moment. The moment I had mentally rehearsed 100 times. I turned to look him directly in the eyes. Those eyes that were so similar to Arthur's, because a few minutes ago I heard your wife whisper to you that after the signing, the house would be yours. That while I was here, she had already moved her stuff into my house. Not our house. My house, the house your father and I built with our sweat and sacrifice. Jessica opened her mouth to protest, but I raised my hand. I haven't finished. During the last few months, I have endured invasion after invasion of my space, of my privacy, of my peace. I have seen how you reorganized my home without my permission, how you changed everything your father and I chose together, how you treated me like a nuisance in my own house. I heard you on the phone telling your mother that I wasn't going to last forever, and that soon the house would be completely yours. Jessica turned pale now, aware that she had been discovered. I never. You misunderstood, she tried to say, but her voice trembled. I didn't misunderstand anything, I continued. I know exactly what you are, Jessica. I know you never cared about my son. You only cared about what you could get from him, from me, from this family. And the saddest thing of all is that Michael was so blinded by you that he couldn't see the truth even if he had it in front of his eyes. My son had tears in his eyes now. Mom, I never wanted you to feel that way. If I had known, if you had known what, Michael? If you had known I felt like a stranger in my own house, that every day was a battle to keep a piece of my own dignity? I told you. Many times, but you always chose to believe her instead of me. You always told me I was exaggerating, that I was being difficult, that Jessica only wanted to help. Mr. Henderson, who had witnessed many family dramas in his career, intervened gently. Mrs. Margaret, do you wish to proceed with the signing? I turned toward him and nodded firmly. Yes, I wish to proceed. Jessica stood up again. No, this can't be happening. Michael, say something, do something. You can't let her do this. My son remained seated, motionless, processing everything he had just heard. I saw the exact moment reality hit him, the moment the pieces of the puzzle fit together in his mind. He looked at me with an expression I will never forget. There was pain, yes, but also recognition. The recognition of the truth he had been denying for so long. Mom, he said finally, with a hoarse voice, did you really hear Jessica say those things on the phone? About that you weren't going to last forever? I nodded slowly. I was in the garden. She was talking to her mother. She said exactly that. She said it was just a matter of time, that you were an only child, and soon the house would be completely yours. I heard it with my own ears, Michael, and it wasn't the first time I heard something like that. Her attitudes, everything pointing to the same thing. For your wife, I am a temporary obstacle between her and what she considers belongs to her. Jessica shook her head frantically. That's not true. You're twisting everything. I never said that in that way. If I spoke to my mother, it was just speculating about the natural future of things, not wishing for your death. My God, what a horrible accusation. But her voice sounded hollow, false even to her own ears. Michael knew her well enough to detect when she was lying, only before he had chosen not to see it. Now he had no choice. And what about the pregnancy? I asked suddenly, surprising myself with my own boldness. Were you really pregnant, Jessica? Or was that also part of your plan to move into my house and stay there? The silence that followed was absolute. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to have stopped. Jessica looked at me with huge eyes, and for a second I saw real fear in them. How dare you? I lost a baby. I went through a horrible trauma and now you accuse me of... I didn't see any proof, I interrupted her. No ultrasound, no medical report, no evidence, only your word. And forgive me for saying this, Jessica, but your word has proven to be worth very little. Michael stood up abruptly. Mom, that is too much. Jessica lost our baby. I was there. I took her to the hospital. Did you see anything? I asked, looking directly at him. Did you see medical proof? Did you talk to the doctor? Or did you just take her to the hospital because she said she was bleeding and you assumed it was true? The expression on Michael's face gave me my answer. He hadn't seen anything. He had believed blindly. Jessica recoiled as if I had hit her physically. You are a cruel witch. A bitter old woman who can't stand seeing her son happy. I invented a pregnancy? Really? And the bleeding? I invented that too? I don't know what you invented and what you didn't, I replied with icy calm. I only know it is very convenient that this supposed pregnancy appeared exactly when you needed an excuse to move into my house, and that the supposed loss appeared exactly when you needed an excuse to stay indefinitely. Mr. Henderson intervened again. Folks, I understand there are complex family issues here, but I need us to focus on the legal procedure that brings us here. You can have these other discussions in private. He was right. This was deviating from the central point. You are right, Mr. Henderson. Let's proceed. The attorney took out 3 copies of the document. He explained where I should sign, what each signature meant, what rights I was ceding, and which ones I was maintaining. I listened attentively to every word, although I already knew it all. I took the pen he offered me, one of those elegant pens with black ink that lawyers use for important documents. My hand did not tremble. It was steady, sure. I signed in every indicated place, with my full and legible name. When I finished, Mr. Henderson verified every signature, stamped his official seal on every page, and signed as a witness and notary public. The 2 assistants added their signatures as additional witnesses. The representative of the foundation signed, accepting the donation on behalf of the organization. Everything was fast, efficient, professional. In less than 10 minutes, the destiny of my house had been sealed irrevocably. It was no longer mine to inherit. It was mine to live in. But when I died, it would benefit people who really needed it, not a manipulative woman who only saw bricks and dollars where she should have seen family. It is done, Mr. Henderson announced, putting the copies in separate envelopes. Mrs. Margaret, this is your copy. Mr. Representative, this is for the foundation, and this copy will remain in the office archives. He handed me my envelope and I took it with both hands, feeling the weight of what I had just done. Jessica was sitting again, but now with her head in her hands, breathing agitatedly. Michael remained standing, looking out the office window, shoulders slumped. That's it? My son asked, without turning to look at me. That is it, the attorney confirmed. The transfer is legal and binding. Mrs. Margaret maintains the right of life estate, which means she can live in the property until her passing. No one can evict her or take that right away. When she passes, the property will automatically transfer to the Street Arthur Foundation for the elderly. Jessica raised her head slowly. Her eyes were red, but I didn't see tears. I only saw pure, concentrated, boiling rage. You have left us with nothing. After everything we have done for you, taking care of you, living with you, enduring your mood swings and constant complaints, you pay us like this. Everything you have done for me, I repeated, almost laughing at the absurdity of the statement. Jessica, the only thing you have done is invade me, manipulate me, and try to push me out of my own house. Don't come to me with that story that you were taking care of me. The only thing you were taking care of was your investment, making sure the property was in good condition for when I finally died and you could keep it. Mrs. Margaret, said the representative of the foundation, a man of about 70 with a warm voice, on behalf of the Street Arthur Foundation, I want to thank you deeply for your generosity. Your donation will help dozens of elderly people who are homeless or in vulnerable situations. It is a beautiful legacy that honors the memory of your husband. His words moved me. For the first time since I entered that office, I felt I had done something completely right. Michael finally turned from the window. I need to get out of here, he said with a tense voice. I need air. He walked toward the door without looking at anyone. Jessica got up hurriedly and followed him. Michael, wait, we have to talk about this. But he had already left. I heard his footsteps walking away down the hall. Jessica threw me one last look of pure hatred before leaving, running after him. The attorney, his assistants, the representative of the foundation, and I were left in an awkward silence. I remained seated in that chair for several minutes after Jessica and Michael left, feeling the adrenaline that had kept my body in tension beginning to dissipate. My hands started to tremble slightly, and a wave of exhaustion hit me like a giant wave. The representative of the foundation, whose name I learned was Arthur, just like my late husband, approached and put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay, Mrs. Margaret? That was very intense." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I was okay. I had won the battle, but the emotional cost was devastating. "I did the right thing, didn't I?" I asked, needing external confirmation, needing someone to tell me I wasn't a monster for disinheriting my only son. Representative Arthur smiled with sadness. "Ma'am, I have worked with the foundation for 15 years. I have seen all kinds of families, all kinds of situations, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that you protected your dignity and your right to live in peace in your own home. That is never wrong." His words gave me a small but real comfort. Mr. Henderson offered me a glass of water, which I accepted gratefully. My lips were dry, my throat raspy from all the contained tension. I left the office 20 minutes later, with the envelope containing my copy of the document pressed against my chest as if it were treasure. The sky was still gray, but now it was beginning to drizzle slightly. I didn't see Michael or Jessica anywhere. They had probably left immediately. Maybe home, maybe somewhere else to process what had just happened. I took a taxi back, feeling I didn't have the energy to face the bus. During the ride, I looked out the window watching the city pass by, wondering what awaited me when I got home. The answer arrived as soon as I walked through the door. The house was in total chaos. Boxes everywhere, furniture moved. The dining room turned into a temporary warehouse for Jessica's belongings. She had been serious when she said she had moved her stuff while we were at the office. She had hired someone, probably an express moving company, and they had moved half a house worth of items. I saw clothes piled on the sofa, new appliances still in their boxes, paintings wrapped in bubble wrap leaning against the walls. It was a full-scale invasion, the definitive takeover Jessica had planned to execute immediately after I signed the papers she thought would give her the house. I stood in the middle of the living room, looking at the disaster, feeling a mixture of renewed rage and something that might have been dark satisfaction. Because all this, all these boxes, all this arrogant presumption, now meant nothing. Jessica would have to take everything back. There was no house to take. There was no victory to celebrate. There was only a 63-year-old woman who had just protected the only thing she had left of a life built with love. I went up to my room, locked the door, and let myself fall onto the bed. For the first time in months, I cried. I cried for Arthur, who wasn't here to help me navigate this nightmare. I cried for Michael, for the son I had lost to the manipulation of an unscrupulous woman. I cried for myself, for having to reach this extreme to defend my right to exist in peace. I woke up hours later to the sound of raised voices downstairs. I looked at the clock. It was almost 7 p.m. I had fallen asleep for hours, emotionally exhausted. The voices continued. I recognized Michael's and Jessica's, arguing heatedly. I got up, washed my face, fixed my hair, and went down the stairs slowly. They were in the living room, surrounded by all those boxes Jessica had brought with such confidence. My son had a red face, pointing at the boxes with furious gestures. Jessica was crying, but something in her tears seemed calculated to me, performative, like everything she did. "You told him the house would be ours after the signing. You moved all your stuff here without even waiting. What were you thinking?" Michael was shouting. "I was thinking about our future, about ensuring we had a home." Jessica responded between sobs. "This isn't our house. It never was. It belongs to my mother, and I was an idiot not to see it." I stopped on the stairs, observing them. Michael ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he had done since he was a child when he was frustrated. "And the pregnancy thing. Jessica, I need you to be honest with me. Were you really pregnant?" The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica stopped crying abruptly. Her eyes moved rapidly as if she were calculating which answer suited her best. That moment of hesitation was her condemnation. If she had really been pregnant, if she had really lost a baby, the answer would have been immediate, indignant, furious. But it wasn't. It was calculated. "I can't believe you're asking me that," she said finally, with a trembling voice. "I went through a horrible trauma, and now you accuse me too." "I'm not accusing you," Michael said, but his voice sounded different, harder. "I am asking you. It is a simple question that requires a simple answer. Yes or no." Jessica looked at him, then looked up and saw me standing on the stairs. Our eyes met, and in hers, I saw pure hatred, but also something else. Defeat. She knew she had lost Michael. She knew the spell was broken. "I was pregnant," she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. "I don't believe you," Michael said simply. Those 3 words fell like a final sentence. Jessica turned toward him with wide eyes. "What did you say?" "I said I don't believe you. My mother is right. Everything was too convenient. The pregnancy just when we needed to move. The loss just when we needed to stay. Your constant insistence on changing the house, on taking control of everything. The whispers about the house being ours. Moving your things here today while we were at the office. Everything fits perfectly into a pattern, Jessica. A pattern of manipulation I was too blind to see." Jessica tried to approach him, but Michael backed away. "Don't touch me. I need space. I need to think." "Michael, please, baby. You're letting your mother fill your head with lies. She always hated me, since day one. She never gave me a real chance." "I gave you every chance," I said from the stairs, descending slowly. "I welcomed you into my house. I accepted you into my family. I allowed you to live here when it was supposedly temporary, and you took it all, as if you deserved it, as if I were an annoying obstacle on your path to what you wanted." Jessica turned to me with poison in her eyes. "This is your fault. You have destroyed my marriage. You have poisoned Michael against me." I didn't correct her. "You destroyed your marriage when you decided greed was more important than love, when you decided a house was worth more than a genuine relationship with your husband and his family." Michael walked to the window, turning his back on both of us. His shoulders rose and fell with deep breaths. "I want you to leave, Jessica." The words hung in the air like knives. Jessica stood motionless. "What?" "I want you to pack your things and leave. Tonight, I can't look at you right now without wondering what else was a lie, what else you manipulated, how much of us was real. You can't be serious. I am your wife. We are married. Yes, we are married. And maybe we can fix this eventually, work on our relationship, go to therapy. But right now, I need you to leave. I need space to think without your influence, without your tears, without your manipulations." Jessica looked at me as if I were responsible for every word coming out of Michael's mouth. In a way, I was. I had uncovered the truth. I had forced this confrontation. But I felt no guilt. I felt relief. "This isn't going to stay like this," Jessica said with an icy voice, all pretense of tears gone. "I am going to fight for my marriage. I am going to fight for what belongs to me." "The house doesn't belong to you," I reminded her softly. "It can never belong to you now. So if you really love my son, if there is something genuine in you, prove it now. Leave with dignity." Jessica stomped up the stairs. She passed by me without looking at me. I heard doors slamming upstairs, drawers opening and closing violently, the sound of the chaos of someone packing with fury. Michael and I remained in the living room, surrounded by all those boxes Jessica had brought with such confidence just hours before. My son finally turned to me. He had red eyes, a haggard face. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." I approached him and hugged him. He was taller than me, had grown so much, but in that moment he felt like the little boy I used to console after nightmares. "I know, son, I know." Jessica came down the stairs 40 minutes later with 2 large suitcases and a backpack. Her makeup was smeared, her hair messy, but her eyes burned with a cold determination that let me know this wasn't really over. She stopped in the hallway, looked at Michael, who remained with his arms crossed, looking away. "I hope you're happy," she told him with a cutting voice, "choosing your mother over your wife. What a strong man you are." Michael didn't answer, just clenched his jaw. Jessica turned to me, and the look she gave me could have frozen hell. "This doesn't end here, Margaret. I have rights. I have a lawyer, and I am going to make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you are, manipulating your own son, poisoning him against his wife." I smiled softly, not letting her threat affect me. "Do what you have to do, Jessica. But remember that the truth eventually comes to light. And the truth is that you never loved my son. You only loved what you thought you could get from him." Jessica opened her mouth to reply, but at that moment, her phone rang. She took it out of her pocket, looked at the screen, and I saw her expression change. She answered with a sweet voice, completely different from the hard voice she had been using with us. "Hi, Mom. Yes, I'm on my way there. No, it didn't work out as planned." There was a pause. "I'll tell you when I get there. I need to think about the next step." She hung up and looked at us both one last time. "This isn't over," she repeated. She took her suitcases and left the house, slamming the door so hard it made the picture frames on the walls shake. The silence that followed was deep and strange. Michael and I stood in the living room for several minutes without saying anything. Finally, my son dropped onto the sofa, among Jessica's boxes, and covered his face with his hands. "How could I be so blind?" he murmured. "All the signs were there, everything you said, all the times you tried to warn me, and I just ignored you." I sat next to him and took his hand. "Love blinds us, son, especially when it's first love, when we believe we have found the person with whom we will spend the rest of our lives." Jessica was good at manipulating. She knew exactly what to say, how to act, how to present herself as the victim when she was questioned. Michael raised his head and looked at me with eyes full of pain. "Do you think she really invented the pregnancy?" I sighed deeply. "Honestly, I don't know for sure. But the way she reacted when you confronted her, the hesitation, the lack of concrete evidence, my instinct tells me yes, that it was another tool in her arsenal of manipulation. But only she knows the complete truth." Michael nodded slowly, processing. "I'm going to ask her for a divorce." The words came out firmly, without doubt. "Not now. I need time to think, to heal, but I can't stay married to someone I don't trust, someone I see with different eyes now. Just make sure it's your decision, son, not mine. I will support you whatever your choice, but it needs to come from you." He squeezed my hand. "It is my decision. Completely." We spent the rest of the night talking, really talking like we hadn't in months. Michael told me things I didn't know, small manipulations of Jessica's that he had normalized, how she always compared our house to her friends' houses, how she constantly sowed doubts about my ability to live alone, how she subtly distanced him from me with excuses and scheduled conflicts. "Every time I planned to visit you alone, she suddenly had a crisis, or felt bad, or needed us to go somewhere urgently," he told me. "There was always something preventing me from spending time with you without her present." Those revelations hurt, but they also validated everything I had felt. I hadn't been crazy. I hadn't been paranoid. I had been right all along. The next few days were strange. Michael stayed at the house, in his old teenage room that still kept some of his youth things. He seemed to need to be close to me, reconnect with his roots, remember who he was before Jessica. Together, we started undoing the mess Jessica had left. We took all her boxes out of the house, stacked them in the garage for her to come pick them up whenever she wanted. We returned the furniture to its original places, took down the curtains she had put up without permission, restored the house to how it was when Arthur was still alive. Every change we reversed felt like recovering a piece of my soul. Barbara came to visit us one afternoon and almost cried with joy when I told her everything that had happened. "I knew that day would come. I knew your son would eventually open his eyes. Good men always do." She hugged me tightly. "I am so proud of you, Margaret. So proud of your courage." 3 weeks after the scene at the law office, Jessica sent a lawyer with divorce papers. It turned out Michael wasn't the only one thinking about ending the marriage. She wanted to liquidate quickly, claim what she could, and move on. Jessica's lawyer tried to argue that she had a right to compensation for care services she had provided living with me. Michael hired his own lawyer. Jason recommended someone excellent, and that argument was dismantled quickly. There had been no care services. There had been invasion and manipulation. The divorce process took 4 months. During that time, Jessica tried various tactics. First, she tried to reconcile with Michael, showing up at his work with tears and pleas. When that didn't work, she tried to defame us on social media, posting stories about how a toxic mother-in-law had destroyed her marriage. But most people who knew us, who knew the real story, didn't believe her. Finally, she tried emotional blackmail, threatening to harm herself if Michael didn't come back to her. That was her last card. And when it didn't work, she finally accepted signing the papers without further drama. The day the divorce became official, Michael and I went to dinner at a small restaurant we used to frequent with Arthur. We toasted with red wine, to new beginnings, to lessons learned, to family. "Thank you, Mom," Michael said, raising his glass, "for not giving up on me, for protecting me even when I didn't want to be protected, for being stronger than me." We clinked our glasses and drank. That night, while I drove back home, the house that was now a refuge again, instead of a battlefield, I felt something I hadn't felt in over a year. Peace. True peace. Michael eventually moved into his own apartment, smaller but comfortable, a place that was genuinely his. We saw each other 2 or 3 times a week. We went back to having that close relationship that Jessica had tried to destroy. He started therapy to process everything he had lived through, to understand how he had fallen so completely under someone's manipulation, to ensure he didn't repeat the same mistakes. I also went to a few sessions, working through the trauma of having had to take such drastic measures to protect myself. The house felt empty at first, without Arthur, without Michael, without even the stressful chaos of Jessica. But slowly, I learned to fill it again with things that made me happy. Barbara and I organized tea afternoons, invited other friends from the neighborhood. I took painting classes and turned the study into a small art studio. Life went on, different from how I had imagined it, but mine, completely mine. 6 months after the divorce, Michael met someone new, a woman named Amelia, an elementary school teacher, sweet and genuine, who treated me with respect from the first moment. The first time she came to dinner at the house, she brought me flowers and asked me about Arthur, listening genuinely while I shared stories of our marriage. After they left that night, I called Barbara crying, but this time they were tears of joy. "She's good, Barbara. She's really good." And Michael looks at her differently. He looks at her with real love, not that blind infatuation he had with Jessica. My friend laughed on the other end of the phone. "The universe has a way of correcting itself. Margaret, you went through hell, but you came out the other side, and now you can enjoy seeing your son really happy." She was right. It had all been worth it. The painful confrontation, the scene at the lawyer's office that changed everything, even donating my house to the foundation. Because in the process of protecting my home, I had protected something more important. I had protected my dignity, my peace of mind, and my relationship with my son. Jessica wanted to keep my house, my life, everything Arthur and I had built. But in the end, she left empty-handed, and I kept what really mattered. Now, when I sit in my living room, on the sofa Arthur and I chose together, surrounded by the memories of a life well lived, I know I made the right decision. The house will eventually go to the foundation when I die. It will help people who need it continue to be a home full of love and care instead of greed and manipulation. And until that day, it is completely mine. No one can take it from me. No one can kick me out. No one can make me feel like an intruder in the place that belongs to me. I learned that sometimes the greatest love you can show is setting firm boundaries. That protecting yourself isn't selfishness, it's survival. That true family is demonstrated with actions, not with empty words. And that it is never, never too late to defend yourself, no matter how old you are or how complicated the situation is. Because at the end of the day, your peace is worth more than any property, any inheritance, any social expectation of how you should behave. Jessica thought she had won when I heard her whisper at the law office. She thought her plan was perfect, that I was just a foolish old woman easy to manipulate. But she completely underestimated this foolish old woman. And when Mr. Henderson asked me if I agreed with the transfer, my answer not only made those present laugh and left my son and daughter-in-law pale, it changed the course of our lives forever. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't hatred, it's dignity. It's keeping your power when others try to take it from you. It's reminding everyone, including yourself, that you are still the owner of your own story. And this is mine. This is my story. And it has a happy ending after all.